Hello, everybody, and I hope that you are having a wonderful ImageCon 2020 digital experience. My name is Sam, and I am the Director of Customer Education for Cloudinary. And I am joined here by a good friend of mine who we've done a lot of different work together over the years. We've been working at Cloudinary, teaching people how to use Cloudinary. But once again, we're here together. Marissa, she is a technical marketing specialist with Cloudinary as well. Marissa, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. And once again, welcome to ImageCon in our workshop. So a little about myself. As you heard, I'm now on our marketing team as a technical marketing specialist. But in previous years, I was actually on our support team. So I was doing a lot of tech support. And so I've worked with a lot of customers from free plans all the way to enterprise plans. So I've had a lot of experience kind of seeing where customers can potentially go wrong, what it is that we can maybe help clear out for you today, and just getting you educated. We've come together, Sam and I, working with a lot of customers, kind of seeing what different points we want to really emphasize and best practices. So I'm really excited to get started with you guys today on all of that.
And me too. And it's definitely a case where, as Marissa said, this is a case where we've worked with lots of different types of customers, working on support queues. She has amazing development chops. I'm okay at it. And I think with our skill sets together, we're going to be able to show you some of the ways to maximize your Cloudinary use. So really what this means is you have a set plan of Cloudinary, and you have set amounts of quotas and limits, and you're trying to find ways to optimize that account. If that's the case, you are definitely in the right place, and we're going to be walking through tips, tricks, and best practices to show you how to get the most out of your plan and the features available to you as part of that plan. Now, the first thing that we're going to be doing when we dive into this is really to better understand what we mean by your plan and what that all entails. So there's going to be three main components to every single Cloudinary plan, regardless if you are using it on a free version or if you're using it all the way to our enterprise level accounts, some of the biggest customers that we have. Every one of them has this as a common factor, that they're using their plan based on the bandwidth that is consumed by delivering their assets, those images and videos. It's also the storage that is being consumed by storing that content on your Cloudinary account or maybe elsewhere. And then also the transformations, what it takes to upload the content, as well as to render it for optimization or aesthetic purposes. Those are what we're really defining as those three key core areas. And most of you that are going to be watching this workshop, you have a certain amount of credits that's going to be associated with those. So as you can see in some of the examples that we have here, when we're looking at the storage that's on my screen, it's saying that this example is using 8.89 gigabytes of storage. And that's going to ultimately translate to certain types of credits. So the way the credits would work is that you have 1,000 transformations counts as one credit, 1 gigabyte of storage counts as one credit, and then also 1 gigabyte of bandwidth, one credit. So what that ultimately means is, in this case of storage, 8.89 gigabytes, that ultimately translates to 8.89 credits. And that storage is counted against the total amount, since your storage typically doesn't fluctuate on a day-to-day basis. However, your bandwidth and transformations do fluctuate from a day-to-day basis, because it's based on the amount of people that are consuming that content, as well as the transformations that you're ultimately creating or your users are creating when they are getting that content delivered to them. And that's judged against a rolling 30-day window. So as an example, if I was saying that I created some content with transformations, I have also delivered some content, and it happens to be June 10th, that means that at July 11th, after that 30-day window has passed, any of those transformations or bandwidth I did on June 10th aren't counted against the quota review period. So hopefully that breaks down some of the logistics and some of the higher topics that we're going to be able to dive into before we really dive into how to optimize those and really tweak those to your advantages. Marissa, talk to me about this, especially thinking back to your days when you were working on the support queue and talking to customers every single day. Why is this topic so important for someone that's using Cloudinary to understand?
I think it's really important to understand, just because I've seen it happen a lot of times where perhaps somebody didn't optimize their images and they assumed that right away, once you start using Cloudinary, that we're automatically optimizing them, and we're not. And we'll talk more about that later. But then it leads to surprises. And so you may log into your account the next day and you see that your bandwidth has spiked like crazy because you're loading all of your assets and they weren't optimized. And then the next thing you know, we're telling you to, oh, it's time to upgrade your account. So we really want to make sure that everybody gets a great understanding of what each of these quotas mean and what you can do to kind of stay within your plan, within your means, and just kind of get that going together for a seamless experience with us.
Absolutely. And I think one thing that's also important to note is that we do still have some customers that are using older plans that we had introduced when Cloudinary was first coming out as a company. And those are considered to be legacy or classic plans, but some of you still may be on those. So even when I'm saying things like certain amounts of credits, you might be looking at your account right now and saying, oh, I don't see anything that says credits. If that's the case, that's where you definitely want to reach out to the support team and see if the older plan that you have can be revitalized and brought up to the credits and the current standards that we have, because that way it will make it much more easy for you to manage all of the different bandwidth, storage, and transformation needs that you have, rather than having maybe fixed quotas or fixed limits against any of those, which is the way that our older plans happen to work. Now, hopefully now we get this, and we're going to be moving on to our first topic, which is really diving into that bandwidth area. So we're going to cover storage and transformations in just a little bit, but bandwidth is going to be the first pillar of the three pillars that we're going to be covering here. So, of course, bandwidth, anytime that people are going to your website, to your mobile app, and you're delivering your images, your videos to that visitor, that ultimately means that you are allowing them to consume bandwidth against your account because you're serving them that content. And if you think about it from the perspective of, if I have a 1 megabyte image and I'm serving that to users, that means I'm serving 1 megabyte to every single user. So really what it comes down to is you want to optimize those images and videos as much as you can, so that way you don't have to consume so much bandwidth, and ultimately your user doesn't either, so that way their content loads as quickly and efficiently as possible. So those are going to be the kind of the overall basis of the tips we're going to be showing you here pertaining to bandwidth. Now, the first is format. And I will say, when I started at Cloudinary, I thought I knew a lot about formats, and I learned that I didn't. Because when I thought about formats normally, it was focusing on JPEGs and PNGs and GIFs. But there's so many more that are out there to consider, especially with where the web is today in 2020, where a lot of browsers are rendering different file types. And what that ultimately means is many of those file types actually have different weights. Some file sizes, like PNGs, are typically pretty large compared to maybe a JPEG or maybe even a WebP. So you really want to play with the formats to make sure that you're delivering them at the most optimal bandwidth possible. So Marissa, talk to me what that means for you, and maybe can we show some examples?
Yeah, definitely. So talking about format, it depends on something not everybody thinks about, but the format that could be most optimal could depend on what browser you're using. So for example, nowadays, most browsers serve WebP, so things are a little bit different. It makes it a little bit easier. But even before, I believe it was only Chrome and Opera that supported WebP, so it was a little bit more complicating. Now that everybody's supporting it a little bit more, it's not as much, but still you don't want to have to worry about, oh, well, if my user is loading these images in Chrome, I need to convert my JPEG to WebP, or if vice versa. There's a lot of different things that you want to take into consideration. And so what we do in this situation by using fauto is we will basically say, okay, what browser is the customer requesting our images from? We will take a look at Let's say, for example, all of your images are JPEG. So we'll compare the WebP to the JPEG and see which is actually lighter. And if the WebP, for example, is lighter, then we will auto-convert it to that. And you can have all of this done without even having to change the extension from JPEG to WebP. So it's a very cool feature. So I can give a quick demo on how to do that. We have a sample image that you can see here. I've already got it loaded. It's got its Cloudinary URL. So this is something that you can do dynamically. And so just to give you some reference here, I'm going to use this extension, which shows us the size of the image. So you can see here that since it was a JPEG, the content type is a JPEG. We're serving it from Cloudinary, and it's got a size of 117 kilobytes. So if we, give me 1 second here. If we add that into the URL, we can simply do this dynamically just by putting in fauto. So we're going to load that in, and you can see the image pretty much looks the same. And now let's see what the difference is. So mind you, it still has that JPEG extension. And now you can see that we actually served it as a WebP instead because we deemed that to be smaller. And now we've got it all the way down from 117 kilobytes to 44 kilobytes. So that saves you a lot of bandwidth because when you think about it, you have a lot of assets that you can be putting on your app, your website, whatever it may be. So when you start counting up all of these different images, videos that you have going, that will really save you a lot of bandwidth.
I really agree. And it's something where, as you can see, it's so simple what Marissa's just gone and shown in this case. And I recommend just going and trying this with some of the URLs that you have within your own environment. So that way you can see exactly what fauto would do in certain circumstances. As we're pointing out very clearly, Chrome has been supporting WebP for a while. Firefox and Microsoft Edge are now supporting it readily. So you're probably going to find a lot of your files that are JPEGs and PNGs automatically converting to WebP, which is going to give you a very similar visual quality, but ultimately is smaller in size because WebP is a newer image standard than some of the other ones that we just mentioned. I think one thing that's also important to note that me and Marissa definitely have encountered is that you might be saying to yourself, well, I really want them to be PNGs because I want my files to have transparency to them. And that's also something to remember is that WebP also supports transparency. So you don't have to worry about your files not looking the way that you want it to. Using fauto will ensure that not only are we getting delivered at the right format, but things like changing a transparent image to be non-transparent wouldn't happen in that scenario. It would keep everything looking exactly as you expected.
And something that you also want to keep, sorry,
yeah, you're good,
something that you want to also keep in mind is the fact that using fauto doesn't always mean that we will convert it to a WebP. So I feel like that's something that a lot of people miss. I know I just explained it a little bit, but I just want to really harp on that fact that I've seen a lot of support tickets in the past that, hey, I'm using fauto in this URL. I'm using Chrome. Why isn't it converting to WebP? But there will be times that there may be something within the image that just makes it so that the JPEG is the smaller file size. So we will not auto-convert it. So I just want to really repeat that one more time just so everybody remembers, because I know it can be a little bit confusing that everybody thinks it will always be converted to another format, but that's not always the case.
Yeah, and sometimes, to Marissa's point, I found that I've been surprised where I've applied fauto and I've seen that it converts it to PNG. And like, oh, I didn't expect that to happen, but sometimes it actually does. So Marissa is making a very, very good point. Don't think of fauto as a WebP converter. Think of it as it's always going to give the most optimal format based on that user's browser situation. So excellent point. Yeah. So now we've covered format. So let's move on to the next topic, which is quality. And this is something that we find a lot of times where if you are delivering your original images, even if you've gone through and done some type of optimization with a third-party photo editing service like Adobe Photoshop, you're still likely serving that content as too high or too low of a quality because you have to think about all of the various devices that might be looking at that image or that video. Where I have smartphones, you've got tablets, you've got various monitors. I have a few in front of me right now, and it will display the images differently based on what it allows for. So it's something to keep in mind that it's very hard to manually set quality, and that's why it's so nice that we provide something called Q Auto, which also stands for auto quality. So you load it, and then knowing that it's going to serve it at the most optimal quality for each one of your users' devices, and since there seem to be an never-ending amount of devices out there, it really will make a massive difference and save you a lot of time when you ultimately have to do this. Now, as you can see with the screen that we're showing here, we have a robot where the original is 296 kilobytes. By using something as simple as our Q Auto situation, and you can see our default for that is Q Auto Good, that's automatically converting it down to 156 kilobytes. So it's a pretty massive difference just by applying Q Auto to it alone, not even adding any other parameters such as resizing or format like we just covered. So Marissa, talk to me about what that means to you. Let's show some examples. What do you think?
Yes, let's definitely get into some examples here. So I know that a lot of times we'll just say, oh, F auto, Q auto, but just know that we do have all of these different levels that you can use. There are times where perhaps you may just want to have low quality images in certain parts of your site. There's times where you want them to be the absolute best. Maybe that's the first image that loads on your website. So you really want it to look clean and crisp. So you don't always have to necessarily use Q Auto or Q Auto Good. There's a lot of different levels that you can really play around with. And I can do a quick kind of demo of that here. So going back to the sample image, let's now change this dynamically. We had F auto going, now we can go to Q auto. So loading that in, you can see that the image still looks pretty much the same. And now let's look at it in size. Keep in mind that the original was 117 kilobytes. And now with Q Auto alone, we've again got it down to 79 kilobytes in size. So you can see that just by simply adding Q Auto in, you can already reduce your bandwidth. It's really great, especially when you use it with F Auto combined. But for now, I can show you even an example here. So if you want a more low quality image, now we'll add in a setting. So here we will add in that low. We'll load the image. And now you can see it still looks pretty similar, but now you can see in size that we've got it down to the 45 kilobytes. So although it may not look quite as crisp, I still think it looks pretty close, but now we've got it down even further. So there's all of these different modes that you can use, and just to give one more example, we'll go from low to best, which is going to be the highest quality. And now you can see it does look more crisp. And then so you can see sometimes when you use best, we'll be very transparent about it, that it will still be bigger in size because you're using the highest quality image. But keep in mind that still with best, it went down from 117 kilobytes to 103. So there are still some savings that you can have by serving best images. So that's something that you want to keep in mind moving forward.
And one thing that you're probably noticing is that it's very simple to be manipulating the URLs, as Marissa's been doing. But one thing that we want to show as well is with the way that we'll be doing this with the console is also just as easy. So what I'm showing you at this point is this is your Cloudinary management console. You might know this as your Cloudinary DAM, depending on who you are and how you're using the system. But if we go and take a look at any of the images that are inside of the media library, and we are able to actually do similar transformations with our transformations editor, just like Marissa has shown through URL-based transformations as well. So what I'm going to go and do is let's take a picture of this model that is holding a phone and he's talking to somebody on it. What we're going to do is hover over this and click on Edit. And that's going to bring us to our transformation editor. And then from here, what I can go and do is I can apply some of those transformations that Marissa's gone and shown through this user interface. So from here, I can choose Format and choose F Auto as an example. And notice the original image is 2.8 megabytes as we're going to apply some of these. So F Auto, changing the format. And then I'm also going to go and add QAuto to change and optimize the quality. So I'm just going to refresh the preview just so that way we know that everything's loading the way we want. And I'm going to open this up in my browser. And then once it loads, what we should be able to do is take a look at this and see what the possible difference was here. And notice it's converted it to be a WebP, so it goes to that format that we were saying it might actually be. And notice it's now taken it all the way down to 1.59 megabytes. So remember, 2.8 to 1.59, and we haven't changed anything dealing with the size in any way. We're strictly just saying optimize the quality, optimize the format. And as you can see, there's two different flavors of how you can do this based on whether you want to be manipulating the URLs or if you would prefer to have the guidance of the user interface with our transformation editor. Now, one thing to also note with this is that resizing is recommended. And we don't think that you should be serving originals as I saw with the example I showed that was 6,000 by 4,000. These are images, honestly, that would probably be best for print purposes rather than for web or mobile display purposes because of their true size. So we do want to make sure we are resizing your images to fit for the viewports and the displays of your users' devices. Now, as you're seeing very clearly on the screen, if you commonly decrease the width and height of an asset, you will be decreasing the file size. So that is optimization in that way. And there's going to be two ways that we're going to go about showing you this. There's going to be a way that I'm going to show you towards the end that's using just a little bit of JavaScript, and it's going to be using what we call WAuto, which is where it's going to detect the user's browser size and display an image that works the best for that. But I think the one that Marissa's going to show you is really powerful, and that's going to be using what we call responsive breakpoint generation, creating several different breakpoints of images that really will work for a large amount of the devices that your users will typically use, that will really make sure that you're delivering them at the right scale, but also trying to conserve the overall transformations that you have. So Marissa, over to you. Let's have them take a look at this.
Yes, so this is something that I think is a really cool feature and something that you may want to kind of use. I know it can be a little bit daunting when you are trying to do this and you may not be as programmatic. So there are two different ways that I do want to discuss. Okay, so now that we've got this up, we are going to, I will show you how to do these breakpoints here. So here I have my code set up, and something that you can do here is within the upload call, you can actually tell us how, or you can be very creative with your breakpoints, and you can customize it to however you would like. So something that you can do here, you can see within this code that you can set your minimum width and your maximum width. So basically what that will do is it will look at the min and max width that you set in, and then it will also look at the byte step that you provide here. So here it's, we're going by 20,000 kilobytes in size. So what that will do is we'll say how many images can we actually create within the minimum and the maximum. So for example, here you'll see this, and then what we'll do is we have the transformations here, and that will apply the transformations to all of the assets that we generate within that. So for example, I will run this here. So this is, I'm using Node, and this is my breakpoints example. So mind you, I am uploading an image here that is in my assets, images, and woman glasses image. So here it has now successfully uploaded. So this is the response. Trying to expand this, let's see. So here you can find it. Sorry about that. Okay, so now we have the asset ID, we have the public ID response, we have the version number. There's a lot of different things that we include in the response here. We've got the type upload, the bytes of the image, the e tag, and the URLs here. So, and then you will see at the very last part of the response, we have our responsive breakpoints. And then here you can see the breakpoints, which is an array, but you can actually get, I'll show you in a second where you can see more of the details of that. And then this is the transformation that we applied to all of these images. So you can see here, we're actually setting the aspect ratio, which is 16:9. We're applying the crop mode of fill, and then we're applying the gravity auto, which we will get more into later. So then I can show you what that would look like in the UI. So as you can see here, so this is the image that I had previously uploaded. I've got it already up and ready to show you guys within the UI. So here I actually got this from clicking View Derived Images. And this will show you all of the different transformations that you've created for this particular image, which is really helpful. And then you can see scrolling through here, I actually have this JSON. And this is from all of the different images that were created from within that call. So if you click View Image, you will actually see that these were the breakpoints that were generated. And this has a 200, 505, 730, and 847. Given the dimensions of that image, those were the relevant breakpoints generated. So this is really helpful in keeping your transformations in line. If you want to make sure that you know how many transformations, or not necessarily how many, but you can control them from creating tons of different transformations and letting it kind of run wild. If people are kind of playing around, maximizing, minimizing the window sizes, this doesn't necessarily let it get out of control, but it will just go along with these different steps and breakpoints. So it will either minimize or maximize the size of the image depending on the viewport and then how people are kind of playing with that window size. So it's a really helpful thing to use. That I would highly recommend if you know you're going to be creating a lot of different variants and whatnot, and without letting it get too crazy. And then the other way that I wanted to show you real quick is with our responsive image breakpoints generator. So for those of you who may not be as comfortable with doing this programmatically, you have your UI here to easily do that. So once again, you can set the minimum and maximum width of the image. You can kind of play around with that here. You can do your size step and how big or large you want that to be. The maximum images you want to create. So that's something that's really helpful as well. And then you can set the DPR if you want for Retina, the aspect ratio. So there's a lot of different things that you can do just from the UI. And then we will give back different responses here. So let's just say, for example, I'm clicking on that same image that I had just showed you. And just with the settings that were set up here, it shows you what was actually created from this set of settings. You get to see what the different sizes are, and we will give you the image tag so that you can just copy this and paste it right in your website. So it's a very handy tool.
I agree. I think that's one area, because as you can see, we're defining each single source set. So the fact that it delivers that for you, it can be such a massive help when you're trying to quickly deploy code. The other example that we've alluded to is the WAuto example. And one thing to point out here with WAuto is what Marissa showed you, I think, is the most economical way to do this, because when the example she showed, it created 4 separate breakpoints. It had 2 that were at the areas that she defined in the minimum width and the maximum width, and then remember it created 2 more in the middle. But only 4 transformations really took place in that situation. Whereas the example I'm about to show you, it's going to create a lot, because it's all dependent on what browsers and devices are looking at it. So what that really means is if we have a situation where we have lots of different viewports and lots of different device sizes, it could ultimately create many, many variations of this. So it's a great way to conserve bandwidth, but it's not necessarily a way, if you're concerned about transformations, to conserve your transformations, because you are creating more than we had with the example that Marissa just showed. But I also like this approach in some ways because it does help future-proof, where if suddenly we start seeing that certain devices are becoming more popular, WAuto almost immediately handles those right away. because it can serve to those because you're calling that purpose to serve to that device, not defining it earlier in the upload process by creating a breakpoint against it. So let's show you how this works, and we'll go into our code editor to go and explain all of this. One thing that I do want to show before I go into the code is just the fact that everything that me and Marissa are showing you today when it comes to different code examples happens to be in a GitHub repo that we've gone and created just for this workshop. So let me go and pull up that real fast. Where are you? Well, let's pull up a new example real fast. And what you'll see is that if I go over to our GitHub for Cloudinary training, you're going to notice that we have a whole separate repo that we'll be referring to, and you'll have access to this when you watch this workshop. And you'll be able to pull the code files and follow all of the steps that me and Marissa are showing you in this case. So everything we're focusing on is dealing with this W-Auto folder that we've gone and created. So what I'm doing in this case is I'm using Node.js to help upload a new file, and I'm also going to then show you how that renders when we're doing this through HTML. So I'm going to open the W-Auto folder here. And first what we're going to do is we're going to upload this picture of a puppy to my account. So I'm just saying that I want to pull it from this place. We'll take a look at the puppy together. Adorable. And then what we're going to do is we'll go and upload it. So let's go and open up my terminal. And we'll just do a simple run it from the root example. So node W-Auto. And then we're going to say puppy upload. Yes. And what we should see is that it's going to upload that adorable puppy with the public ID of autoresponsivepuppy.jpg. So now, if we go over and take a look at the HTML that I'm going to be using to render the content, there's going to be two things that I need to make sure you see. The first is we have in lines 49 through 52, that's where our image is coming through. And notice, compared to what Marissa was showing, where we would have to have multiple breakpoints coming through and multiple source sets, this is where we have really one image and saying W-Auto, but it still will handle all of the different variances depending what devices you're pulling in this case. And that's where it's pulling from my auto-responsive puppy. And then from here, we have some JavaScript that we have coming through to make sure it's handling the resizing and delivery properly. And notice I am bringing through my cloud name for Cloudinary in this case in a few different fields, mostly in the public ID, so I can pull up my image of my puppy, as well as it's referring that it's coming from my cloud. So to show you how this works now, I'm going to go, once again, let me clear my terminal so you can see this. And we should be able to go to node W-Auto /server.js, and I should have everything running on localhost 8080. So let me go over to my browser, and notice I've resized this to be as small as possible because I want to show you how that would work as people would scale up. So we'll go to localhost 8080, W-Auto HTML, and there he is. He's gorgeous. He's beautiful. And when we take a look at our puppy itself, notice that we are rendering it at 400 pixels in width. Notice W400. But I didn't specify that. It's knowing that that's what should be served based on the browser and the viewport. But if I scale this up just a little bit, notice I'm going to get a different image. And now you can see that it's serving a 600 pixel version. So what this is once again showing you that if we have different devices, different sizes, it handles all of those, and you just do it once. But you also know that you're never going to be serving the original because the original is way too big to be serving at any one given screen. So it really does make sure that you're optimizing that bandwidth. But as I'm saying, it may not be the best case for transformations if that is your concern. Marissa, is there any other thoughts that you have about resizing before we move on to the next topic?
I would just want to emphasize that this is something, you definitely want to try and use in some shape or form, whether it's with the breakpoints or W-Auto. There's so many different size and viewports nowadays and different DPRs that are supported with different devices. These are all things that you definitely want to take into account to make sure that all of your users have this kind of seamless experience. So it's just something that I would really highly recommend doing. you want to keep your bandwidth low, you want to keep your transformations in line, I think this is a great way to do that. So I would highly recommend kind of looking into one of these two ways of making sure you're responsibly serving your assets.
I agree. Very well said, Marissa. And one thing to also note is that if you're saying, well, I need things to be specific widths and heights, of course we do that. We're showing you kind of advanced ways to handle this resizing. But if you're looking for just basic resizing, it's definitely easy. As you've seen, you can just put W and whatever you want the width, pixel width to be, or man, you could put H underscore and put whatever you want the pixel height to be. But also moving over to our management console, what I want to then show you is just how you can do that with that same transformation editor. So remember our model for FAuto, QAuto. If I realize that I don't want him to be 6,000 pixels, I want him to be something more along the lines of 300, I can scale him down very quickly and notice now he's a much smaller version of himself. So if you just need simple resizings, yes, we showed you pretty advanced features of this compared to what I just showed you. But remember, we have lots of ranges of what's possible. So if you just need to have something simply resized for that project, or you know it should be that for that purpose, you can do things like this too. So let's talk about low quality image placeholders. And this is such a cool topic. I couldn't believe this. And when Marissa brought this up for this workshop, I was like, yes, we have to show this. So really what this means is that you're serving up low quality thumbnails until the onload event is fired on your web page. So what that helps with is to give somebody the appearance of not serving up white space, not serving up any perceived errors with your images loading, but also making sure that they're getting quick, high quality images with your fast load times too. There's so many reasons to do this, but this is a game-changing feature, and I can't wait for Marissa to show it to you.
Yes. So I'm right there with Sam. I really think this is such a cool feature. So let me go ahead and show you what an example is. So something that you want to keep in mind is there are different options that you can do to create low quality image placeholders. And you know, something there, well, that's something to keep in mind, but something even bigger to keep in mind is the fact that what Cloudinary does in the process of low quality image placeholders is we can generate those images, but you do need a JavaScript library which can help you actually implement this. So while Cloudinary will help generate those images, you do need some extra programmatic coding in the background. So that's something I know not everybody always follows in this. So that's something I want to make sure that we make clear to you guys. And there's a couple different ways that you can do it. But here in this example, I will show you how to blur and grayscale your images. So when you, the whole thing with using low quality image placeholders, so why is it a big deal? So essentially, it really helps you save a lot of bandwidth in the fact that you have your app, your website, whatever it may be, people can only see what is actually in their window on the screen at that time. And it's not 100% of the time that people will go through the whole website and see all of the images. So when they land on your homepage, you need to load in all of these different images to give them that experience, but you don't necessarily have to fully load in all of the images that are not currently in the window. So for example, you want to load in your banner, that main image that's on the screen. You want to make sure those are loaded, but you don't necessarily have to load what's below that fully. So this is where the low quality image placeholders come into play, in that you can generate them in what I will show you here, which is that you can do something like here, we're adding this blur 100 and we're giving it a quality of 1, and then we're using the FAuto. So that's going to make them very light at this point. So I would say a lot of the times using something like blur 100 Q1, it will often be the image weighs 1 to 2 kilobytes in size. So if somebody never scrolls down to the bottom of your page, you just loaded in a very low, lightweight asset without ever having to load it fully. So that just alone will save you so much in bandwidth, and it'll also load your page faster. So those are some of the main benefits that you want to really keep in mind with this, and why it's a very cool feature. So for example here, just to kind of go through this code, we basically supplied the cloud name and what we want these images to be loaded in as, the width and height. And then this is going to be the high res transformations here. And then here we have the LQIP transformations. So this is essentially what is originally loaded in, except for this top image here, as this is in the viewport. We are loading this fully to have all of the settings that are here. And then once the other images come into view, they will automatically have this applied after. But for the time being, while they are not in view, they are having this blur 100, quality of 1 with F auto, and then we're also adding them to be grayscale. So there's really not a lot of color that's being loaded in. So if I scroll fast, you can see a little bit of the blur that comes in. As you can see, we don't want to load that too slowly so that your customers won't really see that as they're scrolling through. So it's something you may need to kind of rewind and to catch it. But that's something that we purposely do. And I actually had this switched down to a slow 3G to load before this in prep for you guys. So you can kind of tell that although they are set to this really low quality image, as they're coming through, they did load very fast indeed. So as I had to make the network even slower just so that you guys could actually see what's happening. But that you can see that with this, they're still loading very fast. So if somebody's not going all the way to the bottom here, you're really saving a lot of bandwidth. So this is such a cool feature to use. And I hope you guys look into this. And we do have other options for this. So just keep in mind, blurring is not the only way. You can use something like, I'm trying to think of what else we do off the top of my head besides blurring. I believe we use vectors and having not too many colors loaded in. We've got a lot of content on this that you can read further because there's so much to be said about low quality image placeholders. We could have a whole kind of just session on that, but just at a high level, this is what you can do with it, and such a cool thing to use.
Absolutely. And as Marissa's gone shown, this is a case where just through simple HTML, CSS, JavaScript, you can go and create something like this very, very simply on your website and create that really nice loading experience for users that honestly is going to do everything that you want, help sort of the bandwidth, but also it looks just visually cool. So I think it shows that you're doing some pretty cutting edge stuff. Now, yes, Marissa.
I was say, and something, sorry, I'm glad you caught that. Something I did want to point out is that we actually do provide a link to this example within the GitHub. So if you want to go ahead and use this and play around with it for yourself and take a little bit of a closer look at the code, as there's a little bit more going on in the JavaScript, you can just navigate to the LQIP.js folder. And in there, I've included a link to this exact example.
Fantastic. And that's what I love about these like code pens, these JS fiddles, and other things that we show in these various workshops. It makes it so that way it's really easy for you to fork this and do what you want with it so that you can really show a visual representation to your team. Now, that covers everything we wanted to talk to you about with bandwidth. So now we're going to be moving on to storage. And when we talk about storage, of course, we're talking about saving your files and keeping those backed up somewhere, and making sure that your originals, but also your derived versions, those transformed versions that we're scaling and we're resizing, as well as changing the formats, all of those are being stored with your Cloudinary account. So how do you prevent bloat, meaning that you're only saving what you really need to save? Well, the first way that you may think to do this is with third-party storage buckets. And yes, this is possible. So if you already have an existing Amazon S3 or Google Cloud Storage bucket that you're using for storage at this point, great. You can hook this up with Cloudinary. So that would be acting as your storage rather than Cloudinary's set storage that you have in this case. However, one thing to note, though, is that we have seen it where people go the other way around, where they don't already have an existing third-party storage bucket like Amazon or Google that I mentioned, and they go and create it as a cost-saving measure as well as a storage-saving method. And to be honest, that may not be the right move because of a few different reasons. And me and Marissa are going to walk you through this. But the first thing to remember is that when you're using any third-party storage, you're paying that provider. So that means that if you're using Amazon S3, you're paying Amazon Web Services to use those S3 buckets. And then on top of that, then you would be utilizing Cloudinary. And we don't actually allow for backup S3 buckets or Google Cloud Storage buckets unless you have a paid plan. Normally, it's something as small as our Plus plans, but it still requires a paid plan. Free plans don't have this capability. So it really means that you're paying Cloudinary and some other provider to have this situation. So while it may save you in storage, it also may end up costing you more in the long run rather than trying to optimize your storage that would be run through Cloudinary in that case. Marissa, whatever areas are you thinking about when we talk about this third-party storage bucket situation?
Yeah, something that you also want to keep in mind is the fact that if you do want to take the route of backing up into your own S3, you won't have any disaster recovery from our side. So that's something that you will want to make sure that you stay on top of. If for somehow you accidentally delete all of the assets in your Cloudinary account, unfortunately, we ourselves would not be able to get those back for you like we would if you were storing it within our own storage, as we do have that disaster recovery kind of insurance for you. So that's something that you definitely want to keep in mind, that if you're going to go that route, you want to make sure that you provide yourself your own disaster recovery kind of method.
Absolutely. And I think going back to the whole idea of disaster recovery, that's giving you some assurances that things are meeting certain standards. And one thing to always remember also is that if you are using Cloudinary's data storage, we're doing a lot of work on the back end to make sure we're providing you with the right security, the right privacy compliances, and we're trying to stay up to date with all of those as much as possible around best practices, around web standards, and what is happening with the overall industry. Now, with that said, we're not persuading away from using storage buckets if you already have one. That's one thing that's very, very clear. If you already have that S3 and you already are paying you're paying for AWS to be handling that, yes, by all means, you should be thinking about this as a way to help with the storage. But don't look at this as a cost-saving measure. And definitely, if you haven't already created an S3 bucket, don't use this as a cost and storage-saving method. It's really meant for those organizations that already have terabytes and terabytes of information sitting in their S3 as a way to easily bring that into their Cloudinary experience. And that's something to keep in mind. Marissa, anything else to say about this before we move on to our next topic with storage?
I think we've pretty much covered it all at this point, but yeah, I would say definitely keep that in mind. As you can see here on this, we've got the automatic backup that we do. So I would really, I would like to harp on the fact that we take good care of all of your assets. We'll back them up for you. We can provide that disaster recovery, and we can provide that whole single source of pricing all in one place. So it's definitely something that I think you want to just keep in mind when you decide where exactly you want to place all of your assets. We try and make it as easy as possible for you guys. So definitely just something to kind of keep in mind.
And Marissa's making a really good point by showing you that part on the screen. You see how it says automatic backup enabled. That's available for everybody. Even a free user can use automatic backups. So if you're saying to yourself, oh, I want to have backups, great, you got it. And it totally fits within your free plans too. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about how you want to handle storage. This is something that's automatically given as a feature for every single account holder that's using Cloudinary. Now, this one, if you're using any user-generated content that's coming in, maybe you have people submitting pictures of restaurants, or maybe you're a dating app and you have people submitting pictures of themselves, or whatever you happen to have, but content that's coming in from the outside, this next technique that we're going to be showing you is going to be highly important. And that comes into limiting original file sizes. When you are bringing in content from the outside like UGC, the overall user doesn't care about optimizing it for you. They care about making sure that their picture or their video is making it to you. And that could ultimately mean that you're consuming content that's very large in size, and that can definitely bloat your storage. So what you would want to do is make sure that that file still can come to your system, but you're overall limiting what the original size would be. And that could be done through certain crop styles that we'll show you here. but also through a transformation style called incoming transformations, where you're changing the original upon upload rather than keeping a copy of the original and then making derivatives of it. The actual file is changing in some way when you're uploading it to Cloudinary. So Marissa, let's show them what this means.
Yes. All right. So let's go ahead and show you how to do this programmatically. So here you can see I've got my incoming.js file, and I've got a few different things that I want to show you here, but we'll start with this top example here. So this is going to apply an incoming transformation within the upload call using the limit crop method. So here I am uploading this bear image. I'm setting the public ID, which is something that's pretty cool to use. And here I would just call it the incoming example. And then I'm using this incoming transformation. So what this would do upon upload is this would actually change whatever the original dimensions are of this bear image file. And it would actually change it to have a width of 400, a height of 300, and the crop of limit, or a limit method. So that we could do that. And so here I will go ahead and run this just so you can kind of see what that would look like. So I will run this in Node, and then it's our incoming.js file. And as it's, here we go. Now we have the response here. So you can see now it has the public ID that I specified, the incoming example. And then here we've got the width of 400, just like we specified. And you will actually see that the height doesn't necessarily match the height that we specified here. But this is because we're looking at it, whereas we want to see what the correct height would be given the width of 400. So we will auto adjust that for you. So just keep that in mind that we are allowing a max of 400 by 300. And here we calculated the height to be 266, as that's what we think will look the best given that width in this particular image. And then you can see here that we just have the URL returned, and it will be the updated image with that incoming transformation that was applied. So that's a way that, as Sam mentioned, if you have, all your UGC content coming in and you want to make sure that somebody doesn't come in and load this huge asset into your account, make your bandwidth run high, your storage count run high, this is a great way to really prevent that from happening. So that is just one way that we can do it. So let me comment that one out now. And we'll show what is next here. So let me go ahead and uncomment this for you guys. So what we're going to do here is with an upload preset. So upload presets are something that are really cool as well. They could also warrant a whole other discussion on what you can do with upload presets. But what, just to give kind of a general explanation, it's basically a defined set of actions for when you upload all of your assets. And you can create multiple upload presets. So for example, if you want this specifically for UGC, you can name it that. Here we actually have it named limit incoming preset, so we know that's what it's doing. And this here will actually define these actions for this specific upload preset, so that I will show you in the next example after this how you can apply that. So within this upload preset, like I said, the name's limit incoming preset, we are going to make this an unsigned upload. And then this is the transformation that we're going to apply. So here we're letting people upload larger images. So we've got the width and height each set to 1000 with the same limit crop mode. And then now we're actually going to put them all into a folder. Here we've got the cute animals, and then we are going to have the tag of limited. So there's a lot of different things and sets of actions that are happening here. So they're all going to have a max of 1000 by 1000 in size. They're going to be put into this specific folder, and they're all going to, at the very least, have this tag set up. So I can run this for you now just to give you an example of what it would look like. We would run this. And now we've got our upload preset created here, and you can see We've got it here. We've got the, let's see. Oh, looks like that didn't run. Just got this one out. I just realized I forgot to save it and save the changes to the file. So here, let's run this one more time. Fun times. So here now you can see that we've got this set up. So we have it went through the host name. Let's see here. We've got it, and here we've got the query param. So this is a little bit of a different response that you've seen from the typical API call, and we've got the query parameter set here. Oh no, I just realized this upload preset already exists. Great. We will do this one more time, and I will create an upload preset, and we will call this upload preset _1 so that we are creating a new preset. All the fun things that you can run into when trying to do all of this. And now here we go. The message, it was created. Here we've got the name, and since I changed it, I had to update it to 1. The rate limit you'll see is allowed at 500. And this is basically pertaining to, because we're using the admin API, it is a rate limited API. So that's why you are seeing this in the response. Given my first attempt to create an already existing upload preset in my account, that was 1 use. And now I've created the second here with this limit incoming preset 1. That is now 2 counts of me calling the admin API. So that is where this actual number count is coming from moving forward. And just to kind of build on that, since you're seeing this here, we have also our upload API, which you will use to upload all of your assets. That is not a rate limited API, which is why you did not see this count come up in the upload calls that I had made previously.
It all makes sense. It's really, really powerful what you're showing here.
Yes. And then now that we've created this upload preset, I will now show you how to apply it. All right, so we will uncomment that. I will make sure to save the changes this time. And here, now you can see I'm once again uploading the bare image, but this time we're once again giving a public ID, and now we're specifying the upload preset. So now what that's going to do is it's so much more simple than if you look up here, each time you would have to kind of set up the same thing of this is the transformation I want to apply. And having to type that out within each upload call, you've now just created your upload preset like you've seen here. And instead of having to type out all of these things, the transformation, the folder, the tags, you can simply just do upload preset and then specify which upload preset you want to use. And then that's what we can do within the upload call. So I can do this one more time now. And what we have is the response, and you can now see the public ID is, you see it's now Q animals because we specified that to be in the Q animals folder. So that becomes a part of the public ID. So now you can see it's Q animals / incoming example, which is the public ID that we specified. So now it's all kind of concatenated together into one. And you can see we've got a width of 1,000 from this bare image. And given the height adjusted to it, it's got a height of 665. So we have made that adjustment. And now you can see it also has the tag of limited as we had also specified within the upload preset. So there's a whole lot of actions that were specified just from adding in this certain upload preset. So this is really helpful when you know, for example, you're going to create a few different types of transformations for your website. Let's say on your PDP, you know you're going to create thumbnails created for users to look at on that page. Instead of having to upload or specify those dimensions every time, you can simply do something like use an upload preset, and that will automatically be generated. It can tag your assets depending on what you want them to be labeled. There's so many different options of what you can do with that.
I agree. And I really do. One thing that I think me and Marissa both encountered over the years is that whenever a user learns about upload presets, they get very, very excited because they can definitely see like, okay, I maybe wasn't using these to their full capability, or maybe they're using it for the first time, but there's a lot of power here. What's even more powerful is, as Marissa showed, you can do this programmatically. And we showed how you're doing this with our Node SDK. But you can even do this if you're a non-technical user and you're just focusing on using things within our user interface with the console or the DAM. So what we're going to do is pop on over to my user interface, and I'm going to show you how you can build upload presets here and then also apply them when you're doing uploads too. So to find all of your upload presets in the console, you're going to go over to your settings section, and then there's going to be an upload tab. Select that, and then scroll to the bottom, and you're going to find all of your upload presets right there. And as you can see, I am an upload preset fiend. I have a lot of them, and there's a reason for it. They're powerful, as we pointed out. The one we're going to be showing you is one that I've gone and created called Incoming, which really resembles what Marissa had built with her incoming upload presets. But we'll break it down to show you how I did it. So first thing that I've gone and done is I've indicated this needs to be a signed upload preset. This is the only way they're going to be able to apply these through the console. They have to be signed. And I've also given this the name of Incoming. From here, I'm stating pretty basic stuff, stating that I want to use the file name and not add any unique characters to it. So whatever it's called on my end, that's what Cloudinary needs to keep for the public ID. But then when we get to upload manipulations, this is where I'm saying I want to use that limit crop style that we showed and say that anything that's coming in with this upload preset needs to be limited to 1,000 pixels in width. So that way the aspect ratio is still kept intact, but nothing will ever be larger than 1,000 pixels. And that, once again, you can see how that could be powerful for that user-generated content, because now we can ensure that 1,000 pixels will look great on all of the different sizes I need to display it on, but I'm also not asking somebody to potentially add a 9,000 pixel image or something along those lines that really I don't need to have all of that stored in my system. So I've gone and added all of that detail to it. And the first way that we'll go about doing this is by going over to my media library and choosing my upload widget from here. And what we're going to want to do is make sure we're choosing advanced and choosing the upload preset that we want. And notice any of the assigned ones that happen to be in that area, including incoming, is there. So now that I've chose incoming for my upload preset, I'm going to choose this file called Big Puppy. And we can see here that Big Puppy needs to get a little bit smaller before I make it into the system. And if we go and just take a look at this guy, let's see what happens when I do a quick look at him. You'll see, once again, it's a bigger version of the one that we use for WAuto. And we can also see here that it's 432 kilobytes in terms of file size. So when I go and say, yes, I want to apply this in there, you'll notice that the Big Puppy is in the system. And notice it's 1,000 pixels in width, which is great. It's exactly what we wanted it to be. And also notice it's 110 kilobytes compared to what we showed earlier, 432. Remember, resizing makes a difference. So now I have this stored in my system as I need, and I can do this on a call-to-call basis, as we went and showed with applying that upload preset. But maybe you want that to be your default. You could do that too, where if you go back to that same settings and go to upload, you should be able to see all the way at the bottom, I can define separate default upload presets specifically for your media library. So now what that means is if I take that same incoming one and hit save, and then from there, what I go and do is forget to apply anything. I should be able to find any image that happens to be in the case. So we'll go and find an example like the one that Marissa was using, the bear. Bring that through. Notice it's doing exactly what we wanted, defining it to 1,000 pixels of width. So lots of different ways to use upload presets, lots of different ways to limit your crops, so that way it's getting to the exact sizes in terms of width and height that you need in your system. Whether you're doing it programmatically or not, it's all available to you. Marissa, any other thoughts about upload presets or the incoming transformations or limit crops, all the things that we showed before we move on to our next topic?
I mean, I would definitely highly suggest using them. They really are a big time saver. I think it's a really cool feature that we have, and that a lot of customers I found find them to be really helpful over time. Um, as you can see, there's so many different things that you can do. There's just tons of actions. There's even more customizations that you can do than what we've even shown today. So I really highly encourage you guys to kind of go in and play around with them and just see all of the different actions that you can apply to your images. Um, I feel like I could talk about all of these things for days. So I really just really encourage you guys for really all of these different things that we're talking about. I encourage you to go into log into your account, or even if you're using our APIs, just kind of play around with all of this stuff and see what you can do, because there's really so much more to all of these than we can really even begin to explain in just this one video.
Exactly. All right, so we're finally to our third and final pillar of this. Remember, we covered bandwidth, we covered storage. Now we're covering transformations. This is how you can make sure you're delivering aesthetically pleasing content in your projects, but also keeping those transformations to be at a manageable area so that we're not spiking. It's also where by doing transformations properly, you shouldn't also be spiking your bandwidth or drastically increasing your storage either. So this is really almost as a pillar when that can definitely affect other pillars that we've covered already. And then one of the first parts of that is by using eager transformations. Now, we've shown on-the-fly transformations where you take a file and you add a transformation to it after it's been uploaded, and you're doing it on the fly as you think of it. You also have seen incoming transformations just a little bit ago when we were showing how to do that upon upload and changing the original. This is kind of a flavor that's kind of in between these ideas, where with an eager transformation, you're asking Cloudinary to change the image and create a transformation during the upload process. So you're actually creating your derived files while it's being uploaded rather than doing it after it's been uploaded. This can be really a great time saver, because if you know all of the different transformations you're ultimately going to need, and you, rather than having to create each one of those individually after the fact with on-the-fly transformations, you can do it during the upload process, so it creates all of your variances, all your derivatives at once. It also really helps your users because you don't have to wait for any load times to create something on the fly. It's already been created for them, so ultimately it creates a faster experience for them. So as we're showing, in a lot of cases, it benefits everybody. Marissa, any other thoughts about this before we show them the demo?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that I again, highly encourage to use when you're using eager transformations. I mean, one of the biggest aspects of that is the fact that whenever somebody's accessing something for the first time, this is already going to be generated. So that performance is really going to be there for your users, especially with the videos. Just that will be something that you want to play fast. They can take very long to load. So you definitely want to try and generate all of your content that will be live within your sites ahead of time, just so you never have to have these slow loading times, because you never know if it could be a new user coming to your site and maybe they're going to be the first ones to load it, and you can't really ever know if you don't have it pre-generated. So you want to make sure that you're always delivering these fast loading pages for everybody.
Absolutely. And really, because you're creating all of them during this upload process, it should really help you keep track of how many transformations you ultimately are creating. Because now you can say, when I upload this file, I'm adding 4 eager transformations to it. So it means that I have my original and then I have my 4 derivatives. And that would be the case for every single upload that you do. So now you're really saying that only 5 transformations are being created. 1 for the original and then 4 for the derivatives in that case. So if you really are saying, I want to keep that to a very minimal area, this is a great way to do it without having to worry about your original file changing, and then, as Marissa said, dealing with on-the-fly load times that might be occurring. So I'm going to stop sharing this and allow Marissa to go and show you how to do it programmatically with our Node.js SDK.
Okay. So just as we were previously seeing, we have, once again, we're using our create upload preset here. So we have the name and what's going to be an unsigned. And then here is where we are actually specifying the eager transformations. So you can see here that we're actually applying 2 different eager transformations to this particular, or in this particular preset. So anytime you use this, both of these transformations will be applied essentially in the background. So here we will be applying one set of transformations, which is setting the width to 400, height 300, fill crop mode, and having that gravity face, which we still is coming up to explain how that works. And so here in the second set, we're now setting the width to 260, the height of 200, a different crop mode. Here we're using crop, and then this is using gravity north. So these are 2 different transformations that you will automatically have applied just by using the upload preset. And mind you, you don't necessarily have to do this within the upload preset itself. This is something that you can specify within the upload call. You can specify it within the explicit call. These are just different ways. There's a few different ways of how you can apply these eager transformations. But essentially you want to use them just so that all of your assets have these transformations already generated. You have those fast loading times to give that experience for your users. Oh, and then I guess it would help if I ran it for you guys really quick. So let's go ahead and do that. So here we're doing the eager.js. And then here, once again, just as you had seen, we have this upload preset now named the training transformation, apply 1. And then here, now it's still showing that our rate limit is at 500. And then now I'm down to the count of 497 as this is my 3rd call. And I don't know if I mentioned it last time, so I'll mention it once more if I didn't. That is an hourly rate limit. So you have 500 calls per hour. So that is something to keep in mind.
Excellent. And what would end up happening in this case is then we apply that upload preset every single time that it would run, then it would create those 2 eager transformations in that case. And thinking back to once again, we were talking about the transformation counts, that would count as 1 for the overall upload, because remember you're storing the original, and then 1 for the one that's 400 by 300 and the one that's 260 by 200 version. So 3 transformations, and that really will help you to keep those counts down and as low as possible. Now, one thing to also note is, as we've been showing in a lot of cases, with doing it programmatically, it's also available in the console. So that's going to be done through upload presets, just as Marissa went and showed how to create those, and we showed a little bit earlier with creating an upload preset using incoming transformations. You can also do that with eager ones as well. And notice in this case, I've gone and said, I just only want 1 eager transformation to be created, but it's one that's scaling the image down to be 300 pixels in width. So if I were to go remove any of my defaults in this case, and I'm going to apply this one just as a simple upload call, I'll go back to my media library. I'm going to upload a new version of our puppy image, but in this case, I'm going to call this eager puppy. And from there, I'm going to apply my eager upload preset. And once I do that, I should be able to go back to my big puppy and apply it. And what you're going to notice is going to happen is it's going to add the puppy at its original size. So this is the full version. This is one that's 1,539 pixels in width, not one that's been constrained with incoming transformations. This is the exact original asset of the image. But if I were to then go over to find my derived versions by editing and saying view derived images, notice the eager transformation of C-scale with 300 has already been created and it's ready to go. So that way, if I have this called in my code for my website or for my mobile app or whatever you're using for your projects, it's going to load immediately because it's already been created by Cloudinary during the upload process. Now, when we take a look at eager transformations, always remember that you can have as many of those as you want. Mine was really simple, where it was just adding a simple scaling with 300. But as you can see, if we go over to the settings and take a look at that upload preset, you can do something that's more aligned to what Marissa was showing programmatically, because you can add as many eager transformations as you want, go into that same upload manipulations area, and I can add and add and add as you need to. You can only have one incoming transformation, so that's the one difference to also keep in mind between the two, other than just how they work. But you can have one incoming transformation per upload preset, but you can have as many eager transformations as you want within that call. So if you wanted to create 12 derivatives on one upload call, you can do that simply by adding them right here. Now this is very cool, and we're going to show you a few different flavors of this, but this is where you're able to determine what you want to crop and then ultimately what you want to crop out with our auto gravity features by allowing Cloudinary to help you with determining what the most interesting aspects of the image or the video happen to be and retaining those for that purpose. And as you can see, this is an example that we're showing down here at the bottom left, where we have a dog that's jumping and catching a Frisbee through our heat map analysis. And then when someone's deciding to look at that same video full width and height on their smartphone in portrait mode, is keeping the dog completely in frame, not showing something that's on the field or the Frisbee flying and getting caught by something you can't see in the distance. Everything is retained. So Marissa, can you show them how all of this works with G Auto?
Yes, definitely. So here I will show you. Let me do that. So I do want to show just a quick bigger example so you can see of how Sam was just showing the dog. So here we have a quick example that is you can also find within the GitHub. We have the link. So here you can change the orientation, which is fun, just to kind of give a full example. So when you play the image here, you can see that it's the dog with the Frisbee, and we see it, but we necessarily are only looking at the dog and not really the background. So here we can replay it. So you can see how when those who are on mobile and looking at this, using G Auto just within the URL, you can see that we're really honing in on the dog. So we're really focusing in on the content that we determine is what's kind of going on with that heat map and showing what's kind of the action within the video. So I think that's a really cool feature that we have in the fact that you don't necessarily have to do this work yourself. You can upload all these different videos and we can find kind of that most interesting aspect of the video. All with our own technology. It's not something that you have to do yourself. So I think that can save tons of time. And just talking about G Auto in general, I can kind of give this example here. So within this, we have the girl sitting here, and there's all different types of gravity that you can do. You can specify north, south. For example, if you want to add an overlay, I can give that kind of quick example here. Let me change it to my account. And I can add in just to kind of show you, for example, I want to add in an overlay of a Cloudinary icon. And let's say we'll just give it a width of 300. So we have that in the middle here, and how the gravity can play for something like this is now I can say, I want it to be actually on the top. So you can just put in G North, and that will add that in there. So I think that's a feature that's really cool within that. That's another example of how you can use the gravity. And then if you want to do something like focus on her face here. Oh, I need to resize it. So let's see, so you can get that full effect. So let's specify this to just have a width of 300. Oh, I think I need to give it a crop mode. So let's see here, see crop. And now you can see that it's honed in on her face. So these are a lot of different ways in which you can just use G Auto. As you can see, there's different ways to do it. For those of you who have tons of, for example, maybe you have somebody uploading a profile picture, but maybe their face isn't centered and you want that to be the main focus of their photo. you can just simply apply something like this and we will find their face within that image. And that's just one of the few ways that we can use GAuto. And there's tons of other objects that we can find that I know, Sam, maybe you want to share a little bit more about?
Yes, absolutely. So one of the cool things that we've introduced over the past year is we have a way for you to actually crop to certain objects that are within an image. So you can see that reflected on the slide here where we're able to crop to objects it finds by using our object detection awareness add-on. And we're able to say this picture of a kitchen, I need to focus on the cake and crop to it. It can do that, and it can do it very simply because it was able to detect all of the various ways that cakes can look and know how to give that to you. So kind of neat. We'll show you how to do that here in just a quick example. So first thing that you would have to do is go to your add-on section and make sure that you are signing up for Cloudinary Object Aware Cropping add-on. Notice it has a free tier that gives you 500, that's a lot of monthly detections. So if you really want to play this, you're going to be completely fine. And if you really want to start using this at scale, notice it's very simple to go from 500 all the way to 5K for just a simple $10 bump, very simply too. So go and sign up for this first. If you run any of these examples without it, you will hit an error. But we'll use our example of the kitchen. So as you can see, it's a very busy kitchen. There's coffee machines, there's dishwashers, there's lots and lots of lemons. So how do we crop to something? So if I were to go through and say C crop using an example that Marissa showed and say I want to make sure I'm cropping to 400 by 400 in this case, and maybe I also want to apply GAuto, which is going to crop to the most interesting aspect of the image. When we take a look at this, it likes the lemons, it likes the flowers because those are brightly colored. It makes sense. Your eye is going to be drawn to that. But it doesn't catch the cake. And what I'm doing is I'm selling cakes or I'm showing cakes in this example. So I could play with some variances of GAuto that we have. I could say GAuto subject, which would focus on where your eye would naturally go. But once again, it only goes to more lemons. If I had to say use some of our classic algorithms that we have, it's focusing a little bit more on cake, but still mostly lemons. But if I then say to it, I want to focus on the cake, just by saying GAuto : cake, the cake is perfectly now in view. So what that's really pointing out is that it found that object and cropped to it in that example. And there's many other examples that you can find throughout our documentation, which is fantastic, as well as many other examples that you might want to try. So if you take a look at your add-ons, they're always going to point you to the most relevant documentation that happens to be there. And notice in this example, you can see that once they have a kitchen here, we're able to crop to the sink, into the microwave, into the refrigerator. And as you can see, there are literally 600 classes of objects that we can detect in certain cases on top of the ones that we had started when we first started supporting this add-on and building this out. So lots and lots of options. I highly recommend using it. So that way you don't have to be manually cropping everything inside of Photoshop or other tools. You can allow our AI-based tools and object detection tools to help you with that process to crop to the specific products that you want to show on your websites and apps. Marissa, anything else about Gravity that you want to share? Of course, we could probably do a whole workshop just on this alone, but anything else that you feel like you want to share about this for our audience?
I mean, definitely play around with it. I think it's a really cool feature. Keep in mind that this is something for images and videos, which I think is very useful. It's definitely a quick way to focus in on the objects that matter. So just keep that in mind. This can save you tons of time in cropping. It's something that we can automatically do and be implemented into your workflows. So like every other feature, give it a try, play it around. It's tons of fun.
Yeah, and that's a really good point that Marissa's making, is that this is something that, as you saw, it is completely free. All of these things that we showed you, you can do even with your free account, and the add-on itself is also free for the object detection. So give it a whirl. I promise you, you'll find something that will ultimately make your website better from this experience. Now, Hey, if people have any questions after this fact, the one thing that I'll point out is that I'm pretty accessible. Marissa, I would also say you're a pretty accessible person. So
Yes.
feel free to follow us on LinkedIn. I'll point out that if you go to linkedin.com, you should easily be able to find our profiles just by doing a simple name search. So searching for me, you should be able to find me very simply. Also, if you search for Marissa, you'll notice she comes up right away as technical marketing at Cloudinary. So reach out to us. We're happy to have you as part of our networks. Also, one thing to note as well is that we have an amazing support section for our overall users that supplies a ongoing knowledge base where our support team is adding new periodic articles that are things that we're finding that users are facing. But also this is where you can go and submit requests directly to Cloudinary if you have any questions about how you're using the system and want to get more technical assistance. And once again, all of that's completely free to other users as well. You do not have to have a paid account to get technical support at all. And that same technical support can be provided through the help section of your console just by going to ask a question. That same question gets sent directly to our support team to help you with your questions and the answers that you will need. Marissa, anything else in terms of like what people can do after the fact?
Yeah, I think the best way is to honestly just read our documentation. And even if you looked at this kind of drop-down link here that Sam was showing, you can take advantage of this. We even have our cookbooks, which I think are really cool. That will show you all the different types of transformations that you can do. I think that we've got tons of stuff just to kind of have a representative show of the different features we have, because we have tons of transformation capabilities. And you can see here, one of the things that I think is also really cool, so you can see in this dropdown, is our roadmap. This is something that we've recently implemented and that you can see what's really coming to mind for us. If you have any feature requests yourself, you can file them with our support team and they can end up on here and have people really pushing for them. So I think that's something that's really cool with Cloudinary, is we're always taking in the input, whether you're a free customer, an enterprise customer, we're always taking your feedback into account.
Yes. And it would be silly for me not to mention the training courses, of course, because that is the whole reason why I work at Cloudinary, is the fact that we're building ongoing training courses in our Cloudinary Academy for users like you. So if you decide that you want to become even more and more ingrained into what is available, note that we have plenty of courses available in the catalog that you can pursue, whether self-paced versions, instructor-led versions. Amazingly enough, you probably have actually seen my face on some of these courses, as well as Marissa's. Marissa has been an instructor for many of the courses that we deploy through the Cloudinary Academy. So lots of options for continued learning after today. Well, Marissa, we've said a lot. We felt a lot. I feel like this went very, very well. Thank you for everybody for your time. Marissa, do you have any final thoughts before we let everybody go?
No, I hope you guys enjoyed it all. I really hope you learned a lot. As you can see, even with us, we make mistakes along the way. So it's really a whole process of learning everything in Cloudinary. I hope you guys have tons of fun exploring everything that we've talked about today, and as you're going through the documentations and all that after this.
Agreed. Well, thank you again. We'll talk to you guys soon. Thank you again for attending ImageCon's 2020 Digital Edition, and we'll keep in touch.
Bye, guys.